Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another exciting broadcast with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time, and quite a few of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you're catching us on a very exciting day. Number one, this marks our beginning of our epic Women in STEM month. We've got almost 50 broadcasts this month featuring some of the coolest scientists, explorers, and educators on planet Earth. There's no exception today. We're going to meet Lori in just a second, who's one of the most experienced and best people we've ever brought on the broadcast, truly. So you're in for a real treat with her and some of her special colleagues at Parks Canada. And secondly, we are continuing our Peak Discovery series. So all year long, we have been partnering with Canada's mountain parks in Parks Canada. These are in Alberta and BC and are some of the most special places, not just in our country, but the entire world. And today, in fact, we're not just doing a part of the Peak Discovery series, we're doing a follow-up to a program we did just a few weeks ago. So I encourage you to check it out on our YouTube channel. There's so much to discover in the series, and we've got a bevy more coming in this month alone. But without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to Lori for Stay Cool Part 2 as we explore some of the amazing glaciers, one of the best ecosystems and habitats on Earth in Parks Canada. Lori, welcome back to the broadcast and take us away.
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for having me back. Hello, bonjour, everyone. Welcome to Stay Cool Part 2, Secrets of the Ice. My name is Lori, and I'm joining you from beautiful Banff National Park in Alberta. I work for Parks Canada, which is the organization that looks after national parks all across Canada. And where in the world am I? Let's take a look at the map of Canada here. All of our national parks are marked in green. And the national parks that we'll be talking about today are marked in the green circle there. We're in the west. So let's zoom in to another map with a bit more detail. Glacier and Banff National Parks are about 2 hours apart by road. So let us know in the chat if you visited one or both of these national parks. We often refer to this whole region in this area as the mountain parks because it includes national parks in the Canadian Rocky Mountains as well as the Columbia Mountains. So today, whenever we say the mountain parks, we mean all the places named within the green circle. Now, across the mountain parks, we share similar landscapes, dramatic peaks, deep valleys, cold rushing rivers, and thick wild forests. Banff and Glacier National Parks, of course, both have glaciers. And before we start, a quick word about the lands that we are on today. Banff National Park is within the present-day territory of the Treaty 6, 7, and 8 First Nations, as well as the Métis homeland. The lands and waters of Banff have been used for millennia by Indigenous peoples for sustenance, ceremony, trade, and travel. We thank them for their continuous stewardship and for sharing the land with us. And Parks Canada respectfully acknowledges that Glacier National Park and Rogers Pass National Historic Site are located within the traditional lands of the Ktunaxa, the Secwepemc, the Sinixt, and Syilx Okanagan peoples. We recognize their stewardship of the lands and waters in the area since time immemorial. Parks Canada is committed to reconciliation and renewed relationships with Indigenous peoples based on recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. Now, some of you may have seen Stay Cool Part 1, What is a Glacier? Well, if not, you can always watch it after this program. It will explain what glaciers are, why they are important. Basically, TLDR, glaciers are enormous chunks of ice that store massive amounts of water and release it slowly into our waterways as they melt. In this second part today, we will meet glaciologists past and present and find out what glaciers are teaching them. So friends, get ready for Stay Cool Part 2, Secrets of the Ice. That's right, it's our very own Parks Canada talk show, Stay Cool. Let's get into it. The study of glaciers goes back about 130 years, so it's a fairly young branch of science. Some of the first people to study glaciers here were the Vaux family from Philadelphia. Siblings George, William, and Mary visited our mountain parks with their father in 1887 on one of the first passenger trains to ever come through the mountains. They marveled at the mighty Illecillewaet Glacier in now Glacier National Park, and they took some of the first known photographs of it. Imagine their shock when they returned in 1894 and saw that the toe of the glacier had drastically retreated. That sparked a curiosity in them that led to a lifelong and, in fact, multi-generational study of glaciers. Well, it's best to hear the story from someone who was there, so I would like to introduce you all to my friend, fellow scientists, and apparently also time traveler, Mary Vaux Walcott.
Hello, Lori, and hello, students. Oh, how lovely it is to be here with you all today. I heard that you all are eager to learn more about glaciers and science. Those are some of my favorite things.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you back with us, Mary. Thank you for coming all this way and through time to be with us. How was your trip from 19th century Philadelphia?
Oh, it was quite satisfactory. I'm very pleased to be back in my favorite place. Sometimes I feel that I can hardly wait till the time comes to escape from the city life to the free air of the everlasting hills. Boy, has it changed since my first time here.
It sure has. Now, can you tell us about your experiences with changing glaciers, Mary?
The glaciers sure do change, and fast. I've spent my whole life capturing their retreat with my camera and discovering their secrets. My family and I have traveled all over the Canadian Alps for our studies of the glaciers. We first realized that glaciers should be studied after comparing a photo from the Illecillewaet Glacier from our first trip here in 1887 to the state of the glacier in 1894.
All right, let's pull up that photo, Jessie.
Ah, yes, there it is. We noticed a very distinct striped rock that was partly under the glacier in the original image.
Ah, so that's the ice there on the right-hand side?
Yes, the toe of the glacier ended at that rock in 1887. A few years later, that rock was still in its place, but completely dry and quite far away from the glacier's edge.
Wow, that is so much melt just in a few years. So you recognize that landmark and what it meant.
Yes, we painted a line on that rock to note where the toe of the glacier had been. That's my brother standing beside it. Photography can be a powerful check to collective amnesia.
That's true. And that's one of the reasons that your work is still so important to us today. Let's take a look at a photo captured at the Peyto Glacier here in Banff National Park in 2011. And let's compare that with 2021.
The recession of the ice is speeding up. When I visited in 1902, the toe of the Peyto Glacier was more than 1 kilometer further down the slope than what it shows here in 2011.
Right? Reef photography shows this so clearly.
Oh my goodness, what a difference!
So your work and work like this helps us to see these changes over time. Today, the Peyto Glacier is one of the most studied within the mountain national parks, of course, next to your Illecillewaet Glacier, of course. Now, had anyone studied glaciers before you in Canada?
I don't believe so, although we met inspiring mountaineers along the way who helped us. My father, siblings, and I were passionate about this project. We were amateur scientists at the time. I never went to university. I like to think I became very good at what I was doing with photography, especially in a time where not very many women were in the field.
So your photographic work is amazing. Jessie, let's see that camera. Yeah, we can see the camera there. Friends, Mary had to lug enormous, heavy camera equipment over rough mountain trails and prepare a glass plate with liquid chemicals to expose for the photo, and then get the whole thing back down the mountain in one piece to develop the image. Now, she and her family completed over 2,500 images this way. Mary, why do you think there were not many women in science at the time?
I don't know why it is. Women have time for bridge parties and dances, yet they miss so much by not turning their attention to scientific studies and using their eyes. There's a thrill one receives from breaking a rock and finding a fresh fossil that nothing else can give. There's the romance of not knowing what one will find.
So, aside from glaciers, there's This is another thing that has changed since your time. This month, we are celebrating women in science, technology, engineering, and math. And I think you're a great inspiration to many of them. Can you tell me about the methods that you use to learn about glaciers?
So, nearly every summer for over 40 years, I went to the Illecillewaet Glacier. I brought my field camera right here and took photographs from the same position year after year so that we could compare the size and shape of the ice. I also placed steel plates on the glacier surface and checked how they shifted in place over time. This showed that although the toe of the glacier was receding uphill, the body of the glacier was moving steadily downhill, about 3 3/4 inches a day.
Wow, so that's about 9.5 centimeters a day. And how did you figure that out?
I hiked out to the steel plates on the glacier and measured the distance from the last known location with a long bit of rope. Sometimes they were hard to find. I lost a few of those measurement plates down crevasses in the ice.
Right. And how else did you document the glacier? I see that there's some letters written on the toe of the glacier in this image. What's that all about?
Oh, my brother and I marked some distinctive large boulders with red paint. These were near the toe of the glacier at first, and then farther from it as the glacier receded.
Now, take a look at this picture. It's one of the rocks that you marked with red paint. You can just make out the letter B. They're still there over 100 years later. The work that you did is impressive. And yours was the first formal glacier study ever completed in Canada. Now, did you know that the information and the images that you gathered are still used today?
Really?
Yes, it's true. To tell us about the modern studies, I'd like to welcome Michel Beauchemin, who is the glaciology team lead for Glacier National Park. Michel.
Hello, Lori, Mary. Thank you for having me here.
It's always a pleasure. So for those of you who saw part 1 of our Stay Cool series, you probably recognize Michel as our expert researcher from Glacier National Park. Michel, we saw some photos of you and your team working on a glacier back then, and some of your monitoring work seems to be a bit different to what Mary and her family did on the Illecillewaet Glacier. Can you tell us what inspired the change?
Well, the change isn't as drastic as you may think. The work we do is heavily inspired by Mary's work, not only with photography, but also with tracking movement of the glacier. The technology and methods have advanced a lot, but many of the things we look for on and around the ice are still similar. The main thing we do differently is how we study glacier mass balance.
That's fascinating. So for our audience, the glacier mass balance means calculating how big a glacier is and how much ice it's gaining or losing over the course of a year. It's kind of like counting your piggy bank, how much you saved or how much you spent. So Michel, when did Parks Canada start doing this work?
In 2009, a master's student named Jocelyn Hiroshi reached out to us to study glacier mass balance on the Illecillewaet Glacier. We have since been making trips to the glacier every year, even after Jocelyn finished her project. We compiled data about glacier accumulation and melt and other parameters that give us clues about how that year's weather and climate might have affected the glacier. We also send this information to Natural Resources Canada, who transfers it to the World Glacier Monitoring Service.
Sounds like a major operation. Now, how can that information be used elsewhere in the world? What secrets does the ice hold?
Oh, the ice holds many, many secrets. I don't think we can ever unveil them all. The ice we study took hundreds of years to form and has seen the world change multiple times. Sharing our research helps us understand how our glaciers here evolve compared to other places on the planet. It also helps scientists to paint a picture of our global climate. Here's the secret we discovered. Jocelyn Hiroshi's work on the Illecillewaet Glacier in Glacier National Park has shown that during summer, up to 33% of the water found in the Illecillewaet River comes from glacier melt. Glaciers and ice caps hold about 69% of all fresh water on Earth. Glaciers thus offer many services to the ecosystems, industries, and people living downstream.
Amazing. So, any other secrets in the ice?
Yeah, another really cool secret about glacier is that the objects that might fall in crevasses found on glaciers pretty much freeze instantly and are secretly kept until they eventually melt out, sometimes thousands of years later. Artifacts made of wood, fur, feathers, and other perishable materials have been popping up around the world after being released from their frigid time capsules. One of the most amazing finds was made in 1991 when Otzi the Iceman, a perfectly preserved man dating back 5,300 years, was found in an Italian Alps near the Austrian border.
Yes, definitely take time to look up Otzi. He's fascinating, everybody. And I also heard about glacial melt revealing wood from a whitebark pine forest that lived in Wyoming about 6,000 years ago. It was growing above today's tree line and shows how different the climate was back then. Whitebark pine is a species at risk these days. And if you want to know more about how we're protecting them in the mountain parks, check out Pine in Decline, the episode of the Peak Discovery series. Now back to glaciers. Today, there are men and women studying glaciers all over the world, revealing new secrets about Earth's history all the time. How do you feel when you hear all this, Mary?
Wow, I never dreamed to influence science this much. This makes me very proud of the work we did.
Well, it sounds like the field couldn't have done it without you and your family, Mary. In fact, the family interest in glaciers continues because your great-nephew, Henry Vaux Jr., hiked out to your favorite photo locations a few years ago. He published the comparison photos in his book, Legacy in Time, 3 Generations of Mountain Photography in the Canadian West. So let's take a look. Let's get our photo comparisons there. The Illecillewaet Glacier, 1904 versus 2011.
Ooh, the retreat is ever going, isn't it? When I first came here, the toe of the glacier was a mere 30-minute walk away from our hotel. By the last time I visited, in 1939, it had become quite treacherous with multiple stream crossings and steep terrain, though I would do it all over again to see the blue-green hue of the ice.
A 30-minute walk sounds dreamy. We carry our equipment much farther than that now, closer to a 3-hour hike to the toe of the glacier, which has receded about 1.5 kilometers and is now found 600 meters higher than when your family started studying it.
All right, so take notes, people at home and at school. If you want to get into glaciology, you need to be physically fit. So our Parks Canada crews are out there with special equipment doing important and inspiring scientific work, following your footsteps. Thank you for sharing what you do, Michelle. I'm sure that there are some students in our audience who may want to follow your footsteps someday.
Of course. Did you know that they can also help what we do today through citizen science?
I'm curious about this. Can you please elaborate?
Well, citizen science means work that helps scientific projects, and that can be done by just about anyone. Citizen science helps us to collect more data more efficiently, and this can be related to many, many fields of science.
So, ordinary people, families with or without education can help science?
That's right. Often these initiatives will involve photography. Mary, you should know that photography has changed quite a bit since you were last here.
Do people not use glass plates anymore? It was always so heartbreaking to lose one on the trail if it slipped off the pack horse. It would instantly shatter into a million pieces.
Well, yes. We've switched to what we now call digital. We can chat about that later. But I'm glad you mentioned pack horses. Cameras now fit in the palm of our hand. We keep them in our pockets on smart devices that we call cell phone. Almost everyone has one nowadays.
Yes, please. I would love to try this new technology later. So, does that mean that anyone can get out there and track their environment with photography?
You bet. And for our audience, if you go adventuring in the mountain national parks this summer, you may just get the opportunity to practice a bit of citizen science of your own. So stay tuned for a cool new selfie-based citizen science research project launching in Glacier National Park and Jasper National Parks this summer. We've selected locations where glaciers are visible so that a photo can be taken and shared directly from your smartphone.
That is wonderful news. I hope more people take the time to come see the Illecillewaet Glacier in all its glory.
Or the Pito Glacier in Banff National Park. There is no better time than this year because the United Nations has declared 2025 the International Year of Glaciers Preservation. This is your invitation to keep the conversation going, find out how glaciers have helped help form the land around you, and try to guess where the fresh water you drink is coming from. The answer might surprise you. So, Mary, Michelle, any last words before we wrap up?
Of course. I was told that February is the month for women in science at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be represented alongside fellow female scientists.
Like Mary mentioned, again, we started our glacier mass balance monitoring work because Jocelyn Hirose reached out to us for her study. We couldn't do it without these incredible women in our field and in the rest of science, exploration, and conservation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, you two. That's it for Stay Cool today. So everybody get your questions ready.
I think we need to incorporate that music into all our broadcasts because it is splendid. So thank you to all three of you. That was so much fun. And yes, we're going to dive in with a nice long Q&A. We've got a question from Mary to begin. Did you visit any glaciers that weren't in the mountain parks? Did you go to Alaska? Did you go anywhere else with your family? Did any of your family explore other glaciers? We're just keen on a little more about family history.
The mountain national parks have a special place in my heart. I've traveled all over the world during my life. I've been to Japan, I've been to Europe, I've been all over North America. Like Lori mentioned, I am from Philadelphia, which is in the eastern United States, and I traveled by train and by waterways as well during my whole life and had connections all over the world. But the glaciers in the Mountain National Park definitely have a special place in my heart.
That they do. I've been lucky to go to the national parks in the mountains myself, and it's just one of the most special places in the world. So I hope for our audience you get that chance to go to Alberta one day and check them out in person. Great answer. Thanks, Mary. Miss Cork's class has a technical question about glaciers, but do scientists take ice core samples from the glacier? Do you ever go on them and take an ice core? And if you could explain what an ice core is, that would be fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Yes, we do sometimes collect ice cores. Ice cores are usually taken to look at the isotopes or look at the oxygen content. All that would be like contained in like micro bubbles or in like dust particles that are contained within the ice. For glacier mass balance, we do take some ice cores, but usually more like fern core. And we basically use those big tubes. We have one just behind me, actually. And we use those to take core samples of the fern on the surface of the glacier just to measure actually the weight of the snow that has accumulated during the winter and the weight that is left at the end of the summer.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle. We've got one on the photography equipment. So you've got this big, huge camera. We highlighted this great thing with the photo plates. Mary, you'll be shocked to know, not only do you have a camera on your like phone now, but you don't have to have a pack horse at all. You can just go up by yourself. It's just, I know. So our kids wanted to know, when you did have to take those big plates, how many plates could you take with you? So each plate is a picture and at a time, and how many pictures can you take before it gets too unwieldy and heavy?
Absolutely. One glass plate is one picture. The way I was always doing it, I would soak the glass plate in a chemical solution and then insert it into this camera, snap the shot, and then make sure that the plate didn't see light. And then I would have to develop it with more chemicals afterwards. And I did this a multitude of different ways. Either I would just hike out with the plates as they were and develop them later in a dark room. I stayed at the Glacier House Hotel in Glacier National Park multiple times, and I would use the basement and bring a red light and make myself a dark room in the basement. And I also sometimes makeshifted one in the field in the camp tents, just made sure that it was dark enough in there and developed the images right on the field. We only took a handful of them at a time because they were heavy and quite voluminous. So we didn't have room to bring 100 of them, for example, but we definitely would have at least a dozen at a time.
Very cool. Thanks, Mary, and for saying voluminous, which is the first time that has ever been said in the history of exploring by the seat of your pants. We also had TLDR earlier. Like, we're getting all the new terminology today. It's very exciting. So thank you for that. I want to stress for our students, if you go to a modern day hotel and suggest to them that you turn their basement into a dark room, they will probably say no. So Mary was super persuasive back in the day. That's very cool. We've got a question about the glaciers changing over time. So you highlighted that, with these amazing stone paintings, you were able to see how it was changing. Do they ever get bigger? Do they ever come back? Is it something where it's cyclical in any way, or are they constantly just receding since we've been measuring them? Anyone who wants to field that.
Glaciers do change through time. It's all based on whether that sort of piggy bank mass balance idea. So if you're saving more snow than is melting away, the glaciers will grow. They'll get bigger and longer and thicker and wider. But if we've got a generally warming trend, then we have more ice and snow melt than is accumulating. So that mass balance tips in the favor of melting. So we are currently in a period where most of the glaciers on Earth are melting faster than they're accumulating. So we're losing glacial ice generally around the world. But then, climate is a cycle. And if we had another period of quite cool weather, it's entirely possible for glaciers to grow bigger again.
Very cool. Thanks, Lori. It's worth noting, twice in the history of the Earth, which is hard to fathom and was way before humankind was around, we actually had snowball Earth. So pretty much the entire Earth was covered in ice. And certainly even 10,000 years ago, big ice sheets, glaciers came all the way down North America. Toronto, where I grew up, was classically under like 1.5 kilometers of ice or some ridiculous thing like that. So it's quite incredible how much these chunks of ice can shape the landscape. So on the thickness front, we had a question about how thick the glaciers are. We had some of these great images of, like, they look gigantic, but is there a sense of how big they actually are from top to the actual ground?
Yes, well, there have been studies that have been done mostly with what we call ice penetrating radar. So it is basically like a device that is being carried, on the surface of the glacier, usually in the springtime when people are skiing, carrying that little device on a sled, and it's sending waves inside the ice, and then the waves are coming back up. And that gives us a bit of an image, of the inside of the glacier, but also how far the bedrock is underneath the glacier. So this has been done on a few different glaciers, but not very many because it's very tedious work. I think it has been done on the Columbia ice field, for instance, and there I think thicknesses up to 250 meters, if not 300 meters were measured, I think. Crazy. And then here on the Illecillewaet Glacier, we measured over 100 meters in certain location.
Wow. Thanks, Michelle. That's fantastic, man. Question from our classes about if it's dangerous on the glaciers, and we'll take this from a past context with you, Mary, and the modern context. When you're walking around, when you're near them, is there anything you need to look out for? Is there anything you're particularly afraid of? Mary, I'll start with you when you were out there back in the day.
Definitely. It is not for the faint of heart. There are what we call crevasses, which are big cracks in the ice that can be hundreds of feet deep. We usually wear hobnail boots that can grip onto the ice as we are climbing, and we always carry a pickaxe, an ice axe to make sure we get that stability and we can climb, and we always have an anchor point. So in my day, when I first went to the glacier, I was wearing my normal outerwear. And as my work went on, And I've seen this with other women in the field as time went on. We realized that wearing skirts while climbing glaciers was actually pretty dangerous because we would get caught in them. And so we started wearing breeches and pants, but we would always carry our skirts because we needed to be socially acceptable when we went back on the train.
Yes, you're cutting edge at the edge of fashion, but when you get back in with civilization, you got to change it back up to what is appropriate. So, thank you for that very much, Mary. Michelle, when you're out on the ice, are you worrying about what you're wearing, or what's the deal? Do you have to change when you're coming back, or no?
Well, yes. When I go on the ice, of course, I'm wearing my helmet. That's mostly in case I would fall inside a crevasse. Like usually, quite often when we move along on the glacier, we go there in teams and we rope up. So we wear like harnesses, crampons. We have an ice axe quite often. We also usually go with a mountain guide as well. And so we try to make it as safe as possible.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, I just want to follow up on something really quick because I think a lot of our audience won't know what a mountain guide is, and it's such a cool job in the world. So if you'd care to explain, that would be lovely. Lori, do you want to take that one, or Michelle?
Oh, sure. There's a course of study that people can follow. There's the Canadian Association of Canadian Mountain Guides, the ACMG for short, and they train people up to travel safely in mountain terrain. So you learn skills like you wear a harness, you rope up, you're able to climb and up and down things safely, travel safely on ice, looking out for those crevasses that Mary mentioned. And it encompasses a lot of skills. You need to be talented in first aid. You need to be good at navigation. You need to be good at predicting weather. And it's all in the name of safety for yourself and your clients if you're guiding in the mountains. So the purpose of a mountain guide is to bring people safely through that very hazardous terrain, up and down, back home safely again.
Very cool. To me, I've always thought of it as like the exact opposite of being on your phone. Is like how to survive in the worst conditions imaginable as you're traversing a mountain pass. It's a very, very cool gig. So thanks for that, Lori. We've got one of the big questions, of course, and this is going to be something that we touch upon in all our glacier programs this year. What can we as a class do to help preserve the glaciers? So I'll leave that to you three to decide who wants to field that, but there's a lot of great stuff, and I'm really glad we got this one. So thanks.
Well, I think we should all talk about glaciers more, and the more we talk about them, the more awareness there is to them, and we can monitor their changes more effectively. And the story of glaciers is way more complex than climate change, and there is a lot more to be discovered.
It's a beautiful answer. Is there anyone else who wants to chime in? Yeah,
I think we can all make a little bit of difference for the survival of glaciers, for the well-being of glaciers with our own personal choices. We often say that glacier melt is related to greenhouse gases. So anything we can do to reduce those greenhouse gases can actually help glaciers.
I'm really glad we got these two answers because they're things that sort of speak to not just glaciers, but anything that we've ever talked about, certainly in the conservation field. Like talking about stuff goes a long way. It's impossible to care for something if you don't know it exists and you don't know the challenges it faces. So if you take home the lessons that we learned from our amazing educators in the Parks Canada and our glaciology team today, and just share them with your friends, share them with your family, get interested, watch more broadcasts in our Peak Discovery series. It really, really does go a long way. And certainly as classes, you guys are the best generation ever for doing things to take action for climate. You're way more on board and way more knowledgeable than ever, I was when I was in school. So keep up the amazing work is sort of my big message for kids. And that's awesome.
And if I may add something there, Jesse, one of the things that people can do to learn more about glaciers and care about them is also to visit. We've got opportunities to get close to that glacial ice, and it really is. It's pretty life-changing to be up close to that force of nature. So there's a couple places where you can get on the ice at the Athabasca Glacier, for example, just in the lower southern end of Jasper National Park. That is a place to experience it, or do like Mary and Michelle did, hike all the way up to the Illecillewaet Glacier. That is an unbelievable, breathtaking experience.
Literally and figuratively. I've got to say, I cleaned a meter of snow off my roof just before these broadcasts, and that was pretty inspiring to see 300 meters of ice that's been there for thousands of years carving the mountains. Just blows that away. So I hope our classes get that chance. We got a lot of Ontario groups today. Get out west, go check it out. We got a technical question about, I guess, in the mountain guide realm. Have there ever been any emergency rescues on the glacier? So this can be for scientists, this can be for tourists. What happens when things go awry? How do you help out? Michelle?
Yes, there has definitely been incidents on glaciers. We here at Parks Canada have a specialized branch of people that are part of a group called Visitor Safety. These are all like highly trained mountain guides and certified mountain guides, and they do unfortunately have to rescue a number of people that have fallen in crevasses over the years, and sometimes with good outcomes, and at other times, unfortunately, with not so good outcome.
It's a serious landscape, and it's one that requires a lot of respect and a lot of preparation if you're going to go. Now, there's amazing tourist opportunities on the glaciers, and typically those are very safe and very well run all around the world, not just in Canada. But certainly if people are in the backcountry, there are risks associated with that, and that's why they're such dedicated and amazing teams. And I want to stress, too, for our audience that might be keen, we've talked about a few other broadcasts in the Peak Discovery series, and one that holds a special place in my heart. We had a canine unit, and the officers bury someone in snow and show what a rescue would actually look like. Not quite in a glacier crevasse, but similar, and just some incredible programs on our YouTube channel. And the Parks Canada sites have a lot of amazing information on just this sort of thing. So thank you very much for that great question, guys. Time flies and you're having fun, and we are nearing the end of the broadcast. Is there any last message you want to start with, Mary, to highlight about your adventures and experiences in the glaciers to sort of inspire our kids today? And we'll wrap up with Michelle and Laurie as well before we say bye to everyone at home.
Well, I hope you all have the chance to go explore the glaciers someday. Mountaintops definitely have fostered some of my favorite memories. Not only the glaciers, but also the environments that they create around them. So the meadows and the wildflowers, if you can get a sense of their details and the frailness of them, and the rock that was carved by the glaciers, and the peaks that have formed these beautiful landscapes. I would absolutely love for everybody to come and enjoy this someday.
Super, super nice. Michelle, Laurie?
Yes. Just as Mary just said, definitely cherish the glaciers, think about them, go visit them, especially this year in 2025 for the International Year of Glaciers Preservation. March 21st is going to be the Day of the Glacier. So this is a new event that's starting up this year. So really think about glaciers and what you can do for them and help spread the word.
Amazing. Laurie, I know we've covered great stuff.
Yes, indeed. The glaciers have an enormous impact on our agriculture. It feeds our rivers. They're really important as water towers and preservers of the water, also carvers of the landscape. So glaciers have so much impact on our world, even though they are in very remote places and we don't see them every day, unless you live right next to one. Yeah. So it is something that's really worth understanding and knowing about and becoming familiar with, and so that we understand and cherish the value of them.
No better message than that. Thank you three so much for such an exciting and fun broadcast today. I love the format. This is a great hoot. Mary, you are amazing, and I hope you have a great time going back to the past or sticking around with us in the future. Whatever you choose to do, we're delighted to have had you, and you've been immortalized on YouTube forever. So that's quite fun. Folks at home, our Peak Discovery series, check out more. Got more amazing programs with these three and beyond over the next few months. Exploringbytheseat.com if you want to check out all our amazing programs celebrating incredible women in STEM from around the world all month long. And with that, I will say farewell. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. And bye for now, guys. Thank you so much.